Hi, welcome to Ask a Question with the Rabbi. We're here live with Rabbi Sova of Miami Beach at Shari Ezra Sephardic Congregation, located at 945 West 41st Street. It's a welcoming synagogue, so if anybody would like to come by, you can call up Aaron Satan, find his number online, and you can get in touch with him over there. Anyways, tonight we're going to ask the Rabbi a few different questions about things that people are asking. So I guess the first question that we're going to ask is, prayer seems like a monotonous exercise. What is your advice to connect more to tefillah?
That's a great question. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone that's tuned in. Yehuda Mendel is a fantastic person. This is somebody that takes what he does seriously. When you come to Miami Beach, please make it your business to meet him. He's a fantastic person to get to know and to grow with. In answer to your question, Yehuda, everyone has different ideas. My idea that resonates with me personally is the following. The Gemara tells us a very interesting thing where it says, what's considered avodah? What's considered a form of service? And the Gemara says, what avodah are we referring to? The Gemara says, avodah shabalev, the service of the heart. Now, if you were to ask most people to define service, they would never say the words, something that has to do with the heart or has to do with prayer. I mean, it's like the whole construct is a very perplexing thing. So I believe one of the Rishonim, they say on that the reason why the Gemara constructed it in such a way is because in order for you to feel that you're doing something meaningful in anything in life and needs to feel constructive, you have to understand that there's a purpose behind what you're doing. If you don't have any purpose behind what you're doing, then it's very monotonous, it's very heavy, it's burdensome, and anytime you have an opportunity to buck that, you will. And the Gemara is telling you it's an insight into how you should view tefillah. Tefillah needs to be that it has to be avodah, it has to be a work, it's a work in progress, but it has to be shebelev, it has to be something that is an inner work, something that not necessarily manifests itself outside, but something that you know internally that you're going somewhere and you're connecting with something. So once you know that what you're doing is a job in progress, and you also know it's not easy, and there are days that will be better than others, once you understand that and you understand there's purpose and meaning, and what you do really counts, once you understand that, the way you can now find tefillah to be very meaningful is you get past what I call fourth grade level. Fourth grade level, you're taught certain basic words, basic concepts, basic translations, but it doesn't go to the root and doesn't go to the source and doesn't tap into what tefillah really is all about. And if you stay at a fourth grade level, then of course you're going to be frustrated. It's going to be monotonous and you're not connecting with that. But just as an example, did you know, I did not know this, and people, if you knew this, then that's great, but I did not know this until I delved deeper. Shmona Esrei, from the first three to the last three, those are the bookends. They always, regardless of whatever tefillah it is, it always has to stay the same, no matter what. The middle part, which is the key, actually correspond to 12 months of the entire year. So if you have 12 plus 3 and 3, that's 18. Plus the Lama Shinim is an extra, because sometimes you have an extra month, Adar Sheni, which is what we have this year. Each one of the blessings that you have correspond to a different month of the year. Now that's mind-blowing. There were reasons why Chachamim, when they instituted, they had certain things in mind. If you stay at a fourth grade level, of course it's going to be by rote, and you're not connecting, and you don't feel connected to it, and it's not going to do anything for you. But you have to up your game, get as many books as you can that discuss prayer, that discuss what it is that you can connect to Hashem. So it won't be monotonous. Like I tell people, if you get the right book, every day is an adventure. So try to embark yourself on that adventure.
At what point in time should a person change from reading in Hebrew to maybe reading in a language that they understand?
The Gemara in Brachos tells us that tefillah is one of the things that you have that you could actually pray if that's your native tongue. Obviously, Hebrew is the best one because there are certain secrets and codes that are unlocked when you use the Hebrew language. If a person is not connecting, because that's the more important part, if you're not connecting, it's more important for you to pray in your native language. So the switch should be when you feel comfortable and know that although you have a very rudimentary level of understanding what this Hebrew word means and the concept, etc., the construct, all those different things, you know it's laden with meaning. When you're able to make that jump and say, okay, I'm willing to sacrifice my understanding for something which is like, if you will, metaphysical, something beyond. So it's really, every person is different. Everyone, it's based on person-to-person basis.
If a person is trying to obtain something from Hashem, what's the best way to do that? Something specific.
One of the great Gemaras that tells us when you are praying, you should give tzedakah when you pray. Why, says Gemara? So it brings a lot of different psukim, different proofs why you should do that. And I believe Rashi over there says the reason why tzedakah is so important for you to do what you, part of tefillah, you know, one mitzvah has nothing to do with the other, is because when you give tzedakah, you are a changed man. What do you mean by changed? So I had a beautiful interpretation. It's changed from the bottom line. You used to have this amount of money, and after you get tzedakah, you're a different person. You're not the same person you were before because you showed an amount of kindness, and also your bottom line got affected. And for many people, that makes a big deal. So you actually are a changed person. You're a changed person? Okay. That other person, we were about to meet out this. But now this new person, okay, different story. Now we're going to talk about somebody else. This is a new person, a totally new person. They say a story one time. I'm sorry if I deviate. Everyone loves stories. So I'll share a story with you that there was a story that there was, I believe, one of the kings or queens of England, I forgot which monarch it was one time going through the countryside and never met a religious Jew before. And the story goes is that they one time saw a very outwardly religious man with the peyot and the beard and the big hat and the kippah and everything, it's it. And the monarch called over this person and said, "Excuse me, I'm very curious about your people. I would like to meet specifically with you in 2 weeks' time. Come visit the palace." This person was flabbergasted. Oh my gosh, the king actually invited me. What are they going to speak about? If I say the wrong thing, it may give a wrong result to the Jewish people, the community. He didn't know what to do, back and forth. And then he got this crazy cockamamie idea that if they ask me to come to the palace, I have to, quote unquote, look presentable like an Englishman. I'm in their host country. I have to show them proper respect and accord them the proper code of dress that they are dressing here in England. And the story goes, to make a long story short, is when he approached the palace, when he came to Buckingham Palace, and he presented himself as that Jew with a completely shaved face, a very short haircut, no peyot. He wasn't even wearing a kippah, no tzitzit. He looked like a regular Englishman. The monarch was upset and said, "I didn't want to see you like this. I wanted to see you like a Jew. I wanted to see you for who you are. I was genuinely curious about what all this, you're going to show me and sell out who you are." So that's a very important thing for people to know. They shouldn't sell out who they are, and they have to know that they have to always up their game and change themselves, and hopefully Hashem will listen to you when you do that.
How important is it for a person to make themselves a rabbi, and what should a person look for in a rabbi for themselves?
Every person should make themselves a rabbi. What that means is, Aseh lecha Rav, the Mishnah Avos says, that you need to make in yourself a rabbi, someone who you genuinely look up to, someone you could look up in the morning and say, you know, I may have made mistakes, but today's going to be a better day. Today I'm going to make a difference in the world. And I have goals, I have aspirations. Every one of us should have goals of where we want to be. I always tell this to people. However you imagine yourself looking or being in 5 years from now, start that right now. Do that right now. Do the you in the future for the present. That's the greatest present, the greatest gift you give to yourself. So have high aspirations, high goals, attainable, reachable, you feel comfortable with it, and kind of stretch yourself a little too. And that's how you can make yourself a rabbi, someone you look up to and aspire to. My personal checklist for a rabbi is of what I've seen throughout my life. People who are genuine, people who speak the truth, people who want to grow, people who are kind, who will stand up for Hashem and His Torah, people who will make great sacrifices even at their own accord in order to afford someone else an ability to grow. These are all the great leaders throughout our history. People who were underdogs, no one thought they would be anything great. All these things are things that I have a personal checklist for. I always tell people a personal checklist I have for, let's say, Gabet Tzedakah, people who are coming and collecting, is if they give tzedakah to other people who are collecting, I know that person is real. Because that means they have a heart. They're actually in it to enable other people to be in a better situation than they're in, and they're looking to help others, as opposed to sometimes someone who's self-absorbed. So my personal checklist is all that I mentioned before. Somebody who has a growth mindset, someone who's looking out for others, thinking of Hashem and His Torah, being kind, generous, benevolent, and ultimately wanting to do the right thing.
What should a person look for in a synagogue?
My personal thing for a checklist for a synagogue is obviously a friendly, outgoing synagogue. However, when it comes to prayer, no talking. There's a time and place for everything. Just like you were to tell somebody, listen, this is how we are. We talk like that. No one in their right mind would say, if someone's in the bathroom, well, listen, I want to speak to David right now. Hey, David, you want to leave the guy alone? He's having some private time. You understand that that's inappropriate. There are certain guidelines that you don't. There's certain boundaries you don't cross. The person has to know you're in a shul. It is inappropriate for you to show very, very light behavior as if you're like in some type of bar. It's inappropriate. Go to a bar if you want. That's not appropriate for a shul. So I always tell people it has to be a friendly place, growth oriented. They want to grow. They're not. This is how we are, and therefore take it or leave it. People who are humble, people who understand and respect the sanctity of the synagogue. They respect the sanctity of people. They respect Hashem. Those are great checklists if you want to know. Somebody told me a great line. If you really want to see a place, this is a great piece of advice. If you really want to see a place, check out their bathrooms. Because that's the most forgotten area that people really couldn't care less about. And that shows you that's the weakest link. So if it looks very nice, then that means they care about details like that. That even though someone stops off to use the restroom for a momentary time, they still feel comfortable. You make them feel comfortable. So that tells you a lot about a place just from there. So those are the short list I would have for checking out what a synagogue would be.
Not completely connected, but is using one of the parking spaces in front of a meter considered to be stealing if they don't pay for it?
That's a great question. I had a very big debate with Rabbi David Shon, who's the Rosh Kollel Chesed Mishpatel here in Miami Beach. Massive Talmid Chacham. He adjudicates many cases that have to do specifically with Chesed Mishpat, monetary disputes between two parties. And he had a bunch of proofs from various Rishonim that seem to indicate that the way it works with parking is based on this. The streets of a city are governed by whom? Are they governed by the taxpayers who happen to employ the meter maids, the people who are going around to make sure people don't have an expired time, because otherwise then everyone would just leave their car there and then they would go fly out to Honolulu and everyone wouldn't have a place to park. So you need to clear those spaces. And since there's a time limit and you have to pay for it, people are going to make sure to get in and out. That's the purpose of that. So is the reason why you have parking spaces are a payment, or if you will, it's from the taxpayer's will. So if you're a paying taxpayer, in essence, this is your piece of property too. I mean, it's owned by thousands, if not millions of other people, but you own a piece of it as well. So if I own a piece of this, then I could pay if I want, or if I don't want. I don't have to. You want to ticket me because I got to get out by a certain time? Okay, fine, go ahead. But I'm not going to pay you for a right that I have anyways, because this is my property just as much as it's your property. That was my opinion. Rabbi Shon did not like that. He said, no, it's not yours. It's the government, or it's the state, or it's the city, or whatever it may be. They have a right, it's as a municipality, to make sure that traffic is flowing. People are moving here and there. You can't clutter up the roadways, and therefore you have to pay. You must pay. It's not like it's a fine that we're assessing you. This is a payment. Just like if you were to go through a toll road, you're paying for convenience. You're also paying for convenience for being parking on the side of the road. So he held that it would be actually an obligation, and you're stealing if you don't pay. My rule, I always tell people, is in Miami, everyone's on vacation, even the parking ticket meter people, and they're just very relaxed about this stuff. So I like to take my chances. I guess I'm a high roller. I like to take my chances about that stuff. It's not, according to one opinion, it's not considered stealing. According to another one, it is.
What should a couple do if they're on two different religious levels?
Okay, that's a very hard question. First of all, you need to pray to Hashem that the shalom between them is magnified. And despite their differences, because first of all, one is a man and one is a woman, two totally different entities. The Gemara tells us women are am b'fnei atzma, their own nation. They have their own innuendo, their own ways of speech, their own ways of what's important, what's not important. It's a totally different thing. Just look at the book from Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. It's so true. It's totally different. So throw that into the mix, just the man-woman dynamic. And also you have the idea of that they're on different stratas of religious observance. And then it really could be a strain. in my experience, I found that people who want to make it work will make it work despite their religious differences. And as long as there's an underlying element of the husband giving love, which is her language, and she giving respect, which is his language, if you have that happening between the two of them, so even if they have differences in religious observances, things eventually work their way, more or less, because they ultimately do love one another and they want to stay together. Obviously, it's not something that should be done, as we say, lechatchila, optimally, but if they're already locked in to a marriage and they already have, especially if they have children, they got to make it work. You must make it work. And the best thing is, honestly, if they have a rabbi or a rabbinic figure or a third party, because I can tell you that I'm a rabbi of a congregation of wonderful people, and I have a rabbi too. And I always tell it to people also as well. I forgot to say this point. You must look for a rabbi who has a rabbi, not a dead one, someone who's alive, someone who knows the person, and I'll put the person down to the floor and tell them, you're wrong. Because I've had that happen so many times to me where I know I'm for sure right. And then my Rabbi Sova, you should live and be well, he's told me so many times, Yeshua, you're wrong. It's wrong what you're doing. You need a third party. So if the husband and wife can agree on a third party, hopefully it's a rabbi who has rabbinic wisdom and he has God on his side, somebody that can advise them properly. So something like a religious observance question, if we say, okay, you know what, we'll ask the rabbi, it will obviate a lot of the discord that may come up, and it gets very ugly very quick, and hopefully they could be able to work out whatever differences they may have.
What about choosing schools for your child?
Rabbi Victor Miller told my father-in-law, when my father-in-law was becoming religious, he brought in an unbelievable Gemara. The Gemara in Shabbos tells us that grounds for divorce are two things. The first thing is that the Gemara tells us a story that there was somebody who unfortunately had a wife who was a real difficult woman to her husband, and the Gemara tells us that the one who was rebuking his son, who he changed the recipe of what his father wanted in order to promote harmony, and he said, don't get involved in what Ima and I do, that's none of your business. He says, I'll tell you why, because I have tremendous gratitude to your mother. These are the words he said. Two things. Number one, your mother saves me from sin instead of me living with non-Jewish or non-religious women when it would be improper, and I could get serious violations and punishments for that. So I have a woman to be together with, so she saves me from sin. And also, she takes our children to school, to a Jewish school. So Rabbi Victor Miller told my father-in-law, he says that anyone who's embarking on the path to tshuva, and he knows the right way to go, if a woman does not subjugate herself to being together with a husband, even if they have differences, and also she does not agree with him for the religious role of the school, that's enough grounds for divorce. Because that means you're talking about two different planets, like totally different planets. And you have to be very careful with that. And I know of stories here in Miami Beach that they've had families that one side was much more religious and progressing at a tremendous rate, and the other one was not as fast. And smart rabbis, what they did was they realized that the one side who was progressing, he'd be able to eventually pull the rest of the family in over time. Right now, he was going through misery. But over time, he would consistently show what it is to be an awesome husband, an awesome father. That would eventually pull the rest of the family and be like, this person is really good. We want to go over there. Their way of life makes more sense. So obviously, if you're able to somehow navigate that beforehand, by all means. I just heard a class from my Rebbe, Gershon Ribner. He says the Shulchan Aruch brings down from Eshelot to Tshuvat Rivash. The Rivash was asked the following question. A person has two choices. They could look in a crystal ball and say, I can either marry woman A. This woman, she's a lovely woman, an amazing woman. She's going to bring me to levels I will never be able to achieve in my life. She's an unbelievable, amazing tzaddiket, a pure, pure person. But I know her and I will never have any children. The second woman is a real doozy of a lady. She's going to get in a fight and instigate everything. But I know I could have multiple children with her. Which one would you choose? So most people, myself included, would have chosen the second one. Why? You have a mitzvah from the Torah, Peru Ravu, have a family. Supposed to have a family. So whatever, so she has her hang-ups. Okay, whatever, I'll work with that. But I got to look at the end result. I have to have children. Says the Rivash, If a person is at the age of 18 and they don't get married, because they're choosing the right spouse for them, that they could achieve higher goals, that is what they should do, and they don't need to get married at 18. Meaning, technically, you'll be like, oh, I'm 18, just like bar mitzvah, you start putting on tefillin. So the same way I start putting on tefillin, boom, 18 years old, grab the first woman I see, get married to her, and call it a day. Who says that it's going to even work out? Whatever, we'll figure it out. What? That's reckless. How do you know? Maybe I told her, but maybe she'll have children. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to have the right one for you. What do you mean? What about my family? My family is secondary importance. Prime importance is of you. You have to make sure that you and her are aligned with the religious values, that you have the same. And if you're able, like I said, with that story of that somebody, he was able to pull his whole family because he was patient and they had a rabbi involved. That's how he was able to pull that off. I don't believe if they would not have had a rabbi involved, no way. They just would have said, okay, this one, he or she is off their rockers. They're doing their own thing, and everyone stay away from them. They're a little kooky. Here it's like, no, they're a respectable person. They're a lovely person. You have to understand they're coming from somewhere. Maybe you should consider. It became like a conversation. It wasn't just like dismissive.
What's the most appropriate way to honor someone's memory?
We find many ways to honor people's memory is you learn on their behalf, you give tzedakah on their behalf. Those are the standard. I have found, me personally, is you take something that person did, they personified, or they wanted to do, and you have that legacy live on. I just met somebody, a wonderful person, Jackie Shweki. He's not even paid advertising right now. It's called the Sephardic Food Fund, excuse me. I just donated because I was so moved by that. His mother made him promise. As she was passing away, she said, I grew up in Jerusalem in the 1920s, 1930s. I know what poverty was like. I know what it's like not to eat. Promise me you'll make sure that no one on your watch that you know ever goes hungry. And he opened this. So we're talking about close to 2 million meals have been given so far. 2 million meals. All because of a promise he made, because his mother knew what hunger meant. That's perpetuating a legacy. That's besides for the Torah and mitzvot and tzedakah and all that. You're living that person's life. They'll never die. One of them, Mefarshim tell us, it says, Yaakov Avinu lo met. Yaakov Avinu never died. What are you talking about? He never died. They embalmed him. They took him and they buried him in Marat HaMachpelah. What are you talking about? And it says, no, the concept of Yaakov Avinu, that of Torah, of complete, an unadulterated life for Hashem and His Torah, that never died. That concept never died. So the way to perpetuate someone's memory, besides for Torah and tzedakah, is living their legacy and passing it on.
The rabbi might have some people that he'd like to dedicate the class to. One of the people that I'd like to dedicate this class to is my great-grandfather, Rudy Erzchek, who took his life when my mother was very young. What's the Jewish response, and what's the most appropriate memorial for someone who may have done that?
The Gemara tells us somebody who takes their life is Ein Ler Chelik V'Olam Haba. They have no share in the world to come. And when somebody reads that and they hear of a loved one that did something like that, it's very jarring. You mean to tell me that person who did that is not going to have a share in the world to come? They were such a kind, good person, or they had some horrific standards of life that allowed them to do that, to take their life. How could we say that? So one interpretation I heard, I believe Ramesh Feinstein, when he was asked the question, should a family sit Shiva for someone who takes their life? Ramesh brought from a Rambam that says that if somebody were to jump off a roof, midway through the way of them going through the roof, they probably felt regret. And for that thought alone, we say that we bury them and we accord them the proper honor. So what's the Gemara talking about then? That a person who committed suicide, God forbid, doesn't have share in the world to come. That's someone who knew exactly what they were doing, couldn't care less. It was to flaunt God. So Hashem says, you can't do it both ways. You can't say, I don't believe in God and the world to come, and at the same time then come to my realm and then be like, you don't believe in me. Which one do you believe in it or you don't believe in it? So it's literally tit for tat. Somebody almost always who does something as terrible as that is usually suffering and they have no other recourse. So they feel that they have no other outlet except they have to release themselves. And the best way to help that is people who unfortunately have mental illness to address it properly and be there for them and support them. And not only support them, support the family members too, because they're also suffering. It leaves a huge void when something like that happens of that magnitude. And I'm sorry that happened in your family. And obviously, the more light and illumination and good things you could do to perpetuate. What you're doing right now is perpetuating.
He was actually a radio host.
There you go. I didn't have to know that. You're perpetuating his legacy right now. You're pushing forward, bringing much light and illumination to the world. So you're literally passing it on. So great job.
Sure. What's the best way to honor a person's parents, especially if they're having difficulty?
Who's having difficulty?
Let's say the children are having difficulty getting along with their parents.
Gemara tells us that Esav HaRasha was the one that excelled at the mitzvah Kibud Av so much that no one could even get to his fingernail. And you look at it, you're like, seriously? Esav, who was such a wicked man, he excelled at the mitzvah? Answer is, yeah, what did he do? He serviced his father, he gave him what to eat, he knew exactly what he liked to eat, when he liked to eat, etc. That's why Yitzchak sent him specifically to go find food and prepare it for me. You have a wife. Your wife knows how you like your food better than your own son? The answer is not Esav. Esav knew exactly how his father liked his food, especially if you say that it was during Pesach and you know how his father wanted it. Okay, but that's a whole different other discussion. But be that as it may, the way to honor a parent is Ezu Kvoidei Shetaser Ritzoneh. The proper way to really, really show them honor, especially in today's day and age, which is very difficult, is to do what they would want. What they want from you. And sometimes, this is going to sound crazy, I'm about to say, sometimes they want space. As crazy as that sounds, they actually want that you are an independent person, you're living your own life, and you're not bothering them, you're actually flapping your own wings, you're doing your thing, you're being a responsible adult, someone that needs to do what they need to do, and you come to them from here to them and just give them only nachat, only good things. That's some parents, they want that, and that is their ratzon, that's their desire. Obviously, if you could do anything that could be of a physical benefit, that would be best, and make sure you have communication with them. And if they get a little difficult, realize that that is your little package that you have to deal with. Because if you try to cut that out, well, Hashem's going to say, okay, so I'll have to hit you somewhere else. I remember my Rebbe, Matisyahu Salman Zatzal, he told me that idea. He said that people think that when they run away from one trouble, they think they're going to be safe. They're safe from that trouble. But the second place that you're in may open a whole Pandora's box of something you never even anticipated. So just be happy with what you have, and you may have the skill set to overcome that. Otherwise, if you didn't, Hashem never would have thrown that your way. So the answer is, try to do as much as you can, and sometimes not doing is doing.
Okay, I think we're going to stop over here for today. Ask any questions to the rabbi. Believe that Bezrat Hashem, the next week when we do this again, we can ask those questions to Rabbi Sova. We wish you a beautiful night. Happy Shvat, 5784. The rabbi wants to say a closing remark.
Closing remark would be the following. The Gemara tells us that specifically this week, a Parsha B'Shalach, which talks about the Jews singing about the praise to Hashem when a miracle took place. It's also the time when we have a tremendous blessing of wealth. Why is one tied to the other? The answer, they say, is because when you take the opportunity to thank God, God showers you with more opportunities to do good. So my personal blessing to all of you is that thank God for wherever position you're in, wherever you are. You're alive, you're in wherever you are, and Hashem is taking care of you. You think maybe sometimes it may be in a situation that you're not comfortable, or you may be in a situation that's just downright weird. You don't know how you ended up here. Thank Hashem. Say, thank God. Thank you, Hashem. I love you. Thank you for being here for me. When Hashem hears that from you, He will shower only blessing to you. So I would like to say and wish to all of you that Hashem should shower you with personal blessing in your personal life, your spiritual life. I want to thank my good friend Yehuda here and Yudi Severa, who's filming us, and he has a beautiful family, and I should bless him that God willing, he should continue to have an unbelievable home, beautiful home of light and illumination. And Graviton is a fantastic product that when it comes out, just remember, I hope to be one of the first people to try it. And I would like to wish all of you a Shabbat Shalom and have an awesome week.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom.